Oh, I got a problem with that.
Um, okay, gentlemen, so we're recording now. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Um, uh,
Pledge
I pledge
allegiance
allegiance to my
to the
flag
flag
and to the
of the
republic
United States of America
America.
and
And
to the republic
republic
for
for
which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
and
with
justice
liberty,
for
liberty
all.
and justice
justice
for all.
for all. I got a question about that. Who's Richard Stans? For Richard Stans.
He's a very popular guy. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so that we can run the PowerPoint.
Yeah. So Steve, I guess part one is we talk a little bit about your, the announcements that's on the second slide.
Okay. So, well, Klondike. Oh, that's the wrong date. It's tomorrow. Klondike is tomorrow,
Oops.
10th, 11th, and 12th. Um, the
I have
Woodback reunion,
bad notes the other night at the district meeting.
1 is 7. They're both straight lines, except one's a little crooked. What can you do? The Wood Badge reunion, open to anybody from any course, from any council, if you happen to be in driving distance. That's Sunday, March 18.
Saturday, March 18th. The 19th is the OA banquet.
Oh, thank you. Again, wrong date. So, Saturday, March 18. It's afternoon, I think, like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
I think it's 5 o'clock. Yeah, 5 to 8.
And visit the council website calendar to find a link for that to sign up for it. I don't know when they're cutting off registration. The Pinewood Derby for Sons of Liberty is going to be May 6th, the district-wide one. We don't have any more details other than it's happening at where PAC 313 or meets, which I believe is St. Camillus in Arlington.
Mhm.
And the district annual meeting and recognition event is happening Monday, April 24, also in Arlington, at the First Baptist Church where 306 meets. It's at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 8:30, and I put in the chat the link to register. I'll put it back in there. If you can, everybody see that link, or should I put it in again? I'll put it in again just in case for folks who just joined us. It's a $20 fee to offset the cost of food, basically. And more importantly than food is nominations. So to our guests, Gary and I'm sorry, I can't see my screen. Who's our other guest with us?
I can't either.
Yeah, if you we've simplified awards. There's the District Award of Merit, which is, of course.
Yeah, I've got the list on the next page, Steve.
Oh, okay. I'll advance to that. So the program kickoff May 11, also at the First Baptist Church in Arlington, and the banquet March 19. The first aid kit fundraiser. This we're doing. We're sort of piggybacking on what Flintlock is doing, and I've got 5 units that are interested. You're basically selling first aid kits to the general public, and there's a variety of different kinds. I sent you an email out a couple of months ago. If you're curious about it, send me a message and I'll send out the materials. I've heard good things about it from Flintlock. I made it available to the district, and only 5 units have expressed an interest, but if they have success, maybe it's something that we'll make a point of again next year. I don't really have an update on the camporee other than it's been pushed out to 2024, and it's questionable as to whether or not it's actually going to be a camporee, because we're dealing with requirements from the city of Waltham that are treating a weekend camping trip as if it was a resident camp. And if we can't resolve those, then we're just going to turn it into a one-day skill rally event.
Oh, that's cool. Good old scout show. I like that.
Not a scout show, a rally. The scout show is not a competition, rally's competition.
Oh,
Well, maybe we can do a hybrid where we show off and compete. So here's the annual meeting.
Question about the first aid kits.
Yes,
Are they more targeted for to be sold by troops or by packs, or doesn't make a difference?
I don't think it matters. The first aid kit is for the general public. It's not intended for scouts themselves.
Not that,
you know,
it's just in terms of the, the saleability. Are adults going to be inclined or less inclined or more inclined to buy a first aid kit from a Cub Scout versus an older scout?
Oh,
Maybe
I
it's
think the
more,
Cub
it's
Scout
all
would be-
prepackaged and stuff like that, and
I think the
it's
Cub
more-
Scout would be the better salesperson.
You think?
yeah.
well, you
Got the
won't
cuteness
know-
factor.
You won't know unless you try.
All right,
Well-
fair point.
But I'm looking for I'm quickly looking for the material so I can, let's see, district. I just had it in hand. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And so this is the sales form brochure.
Uh,
Um, and there's several different versions. So this one right here is a home first aid kit. There's another one for $30. There's another one here in the lower right that says a workplace first aid kit. That's a $50 one. Then we have an ultimate survival first aid kit, $120. $16 first aid kit, throw in your car. There's a $16 first aid kit designed for sporting activities. Another one for outdoor activities. And there's a $19 first aid kit that apparently is, according to what's written here, all the essentials listed in the Scout Handbook for personal first aid, plus a whole bunch more. Waterproof and lightweight. These things I think are like Ziploc bags. So
Yeah.
you rip off the top, but then you can reseal it, and it's waterproof. And they even have a $16 pet first aid kit, so you can take care of your furry companions. And if there's an email here, customer service at rightresponsefundraising.com. Let me go back to the front page. If you here, rightresponsefundraising.com. If you go to that site, you can see more details about the products. So I just wanted to share that briefly with you if you're interested in it. So again, I don't think that these sorts of first aid kits, it matters who's selling them, because they're really intended for the neighbors, friends, family. And for $16, the idea of throwing something into your car to be prepared, that's a good selling point, right?
Right?
All right, so back to the annual meeting recognition event. We need nominations for District Award of Merit, the Charles Nason Award, Unit Leader Recognition. We've simplified that category. We used to do a lot of different awards, Rookie Scoutmaster of the Year, Cub Master of the Year. And we decided last year to just simplify everything and call it the Outstanding Scouter Award. and rather than one leader getting an award, every leader whose colleagues feel that they're worthy of recognition can get recognized. And there's no form. All we ask is for, a couple of paragraphs talking about why this person is so wonderful. And I'm sure we'll agree and we'll recognize them. We'll give them a token from the Scout shop and a certificate, and we'll make a presentation there on the 24th. And if the person can't attend, we'll make arrangements to come to the unit and present. Just a note about the District Award of Merit. Of course, it's for volunteer service at the district level, which is distinct from service to an individual unit. And so there's different levels of that. I mean, if somebody's been a merit badge counselor and has served kids throughout the district, not just their own unit, I would think that would be something worth consideration. So it doesn't have to be a very high threshold, but it should be something significant that benefits, the district-wide activities. The Charles Nason Award, my Arlington friend probably is familiar with Charles or has heard of him quite often. And this has a prerequisite of having a District Award of Merit, but is for long-term service, not just to the district, but to units as well. So if you have questions about nominating somebody, if you think somebody's worthy, but you don't know exactly, talk to me about it, and we'll make sure that we get them in the right category. We can give two district awards of merit, but only one Charles Nason Award. These frost, goodness knows it's been a warm winter, so I don't know if anybody qualifies, but we've got the frost.
Why don't we put a red circle around with a cross and give them out as not cold winter or not frost points?
Yeah, exactly. That would be fun. It's the Frost Point Awards are cumulative for cumulative degrees below freezing in a tent, and there's 3 levels: white, blue, and purple, because those are the colors of the shades of color that your lips turn depending on how many degrees below freezing you've been camping. The purple being the coldest. So the idea is that we would scale, these, and it's for youth, and we're happy to recognize them at the district meeting. And then these other 2 patches of Snowy Owl and Deep Freeze. Snowy Owl's for 1 night in a tent, and the Deep Freeze is for 2 nights in a tent below freezing. But I'll tell you, since the weather has been so warm this winter, I would be happy to give them out to scouts who just did winter camping in a tent, whether it was below freezing or not, just to encourage cold weather camping.
Yeah. I don't know how many cold nights there really were. I know it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, really. I mean, some of them I'm sure, got close to freezing overnight, but other than the one weekend that we had to, postpone
Klondike.
Klondike, the rest of them were really rather relatively warm.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, this got sent to me a couple of days ago. There is going to be a course to prepare someone to become a Leave No Trace trainer. That's going to happen at TL Store Reservation May 6th and 7th. And they'd like to have you people registered by April 15th. There's a link there to Jan, the person who is coordinating that course. So I guess this is the essentially like a teacher certification level, so that you can then teach the principles of leave no trace in a kind of formal way. So then I think then what's next, Steve? Next one. Ah, yeah, this is what we were going to talk about.
Go ahead. I was trying to find a full screen option here.
Okay.
There it is. What happened? It all went away.
It didn't change.
Here
Up
we-
there. So anyway, you know, this is a resource. It apparently is still available from Mike Souza. There's his email address. It has a series of hikes in it in the Boston area. Obviously, some of them focus on the Salem Marblehead region, others on Lexington Concord. There's also the Skyline Trail, the two Skyline Trails, the Middlesex Fells and the Blue Hills ones in there. And if you go to the next slide, it shows you the kind of maps they have. So you know it's good enough to take a hike on. And this particular one in Lynn, the Pirates Trek, it could turn into a 10-mile hike if you do it. There's also an abbreviated version if you want to do that with Cub Scouts. Along with the maps, they have kind of the points of interest along the way that you can find out about a little bit about the history of the things you're walking by in some cases. This one's kind of neat because it has a place where you can do remember the old scout skill of being able to estimate the height of something from as you're doing a hike. There's actually a place where you can do that. There's an old unused observation tower here. So it's a good resource. I know that we've done that with kids from our troop, done a number of them. They've been successful. The kids seem to like them. And it's good enough that you can turn a patrol loose on one of these things and they won't get too lost. And that's not that is a kind of a private version. The next slide, I think, starts talking about the things the council has available. Yeah, you know, there is an official award. I'm not, John, do you know the requirement for the Historic Trails Award?
I think you got to camp on it, and then I think I don't know if it's a 50-mile or.
I don't think the question is it a specific one that has been formally approved that you can do?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just the historic trail in your neighborhood. You can do it, but you got to do a
Okay.
service project on it too.
Okay, that's it. The service project. That's the other part. Yeah. If you go to the Spirit of Adventure Council website, you type in historic trails on the search box. They do list two. They list the Minuteman's Pursuit Trail, and they list one up in Lowell. And it's interesting because I went to the neighboring councils and tried the same thing and got nothing. So it's kind of up to you to find some of these things.
Is the one in Lola Trail or is that the canals?
I think it's the canal. The canal is part of it, yeah. And then there's some way you go along a rail bed.
Yeah, the canal is a nice trip.
Yeah, and they have a couple of at least one I saw one of the old mills that has all the unsafe equipment available to look at. You know, the way they ran the lathes and things was they had a rotating cylinder up at the ceiling and then belts going down to the individual pieces of equipment. And I can picture that being a potential hazard.
I worked in a factory like that.
Did you?
Yeah, it was an aluminum rolling mill in North Haven, Connecticut.
And then they had all that kind of the exposed good.
They did. They killed somebody and things changed
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah, because I had gotten was given a table saw from a furniture factory, and it had absolutely no safety features. I mean, it was like
That
you know,
was the fast cut saw.
I think so. You know, how to lose your fingers. If you don't get caught in the belt, you're gonna lose your fingers anyway.
If you buy the right first aid kit, you can put them back on.
The mill in Lowell that is open to the public for tours is the Boot Mill, Boott. And I remember doing that with my family, yeah, probably 20 years ago or more. And it was right in the neighborhood. We could actually take a canal boat tour at the same time. So it was I mean, it wasn't like a troop event or anything like that, but we did spend a good 3.5 or 4 hours between the canal boat tour and the boot cotton mill, which they actually put in operation, which was really quite something to experience. The floors shook like crazy. And one of the things they explained about the construction was because of all the vibration, the floors were not actually directly connected to the exterior walls. They were sort of floating floors that were strong enough, but they had essentially used damping so that they didn't shake the whole building apart. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, the other thing you just
the report that I gave Ron to send around, if you all got it and look at it, it repeats some of the stuff. One of the things that I mentioned there that nobody mentioned yet was the Bedford Flag Trail. And in one of the pages of what I sent, there it is the list of 9 historic trail awards listed in the BSA Historic Trails nationwide index. I list all 9 of them, but I only reported on those 2: the Bedford Flag Trail and the Minuteman Pursuit Trail. So.
Yeah, you bring me up the factory. The other great one is the Saugus Iron Works. When they are actually running it in operation, you can see the method, the way they would roll the preparation of the iron. By a blacksmith, they had the hammers that are run by water power and things like that. So that's another one of an operational factory type system. Yeah. The Minuteman Pursuit Trail, I've got the map of that on the next slide, Steve. Yeah. Now, Gary, tell us about the genesis of this.
Okay, well, I can't talk about the entire length of the trail, but the part that I know about is that section of what's marked as leg 2, that runs basically through the heart of Arlington from, I guess, I don't remember where the bottom of it, but anyway, back in around 2007 or maybe earlier, an Eagle Scout from Troop 306 undertook to create the initial version of this as I said, for its Eagle Scout, or part of his Eagle Scout project, and that was a section that ran through perhaps North Cambridge was as far southeast as it went, up to I don't think he went all the way up to Minuteman National Park, but he did go, I think, as far as the what's listed there as kind of the end of leg 2, where it crosses into leg 1. So leg 1 and leg 3 came later. And if you read through this document, interestingly enough, it says that much of this was, at least the booklet and its resources, were compiled and improved by a Troop 306 in some town in Florida, much later. And so anyway, that scout was quite a industrious scout. I was the PAC committee chairman while he was for part of the time. He was 2 years behind my son, and when my son aged out and I crossed over or graduated into the Troop 302 together with him, and then I didn't have quite so much contact with PAC 305, which is what it was before the boy in question, the Eagle Scout, crossed into 306. So, but within the Arlington-centric scouting community in its time, it received a good bit of publicity and popularity. I think scouts really were anxious and wanted to try it out. And it hit all the same, all those sites that are now listed as Arlington attractions. So that's my connection to it was again just for a piece of it, not the entire length of it. If I can go off that specific topic a little bit, but talk a little bit about the map. This is actually, if you go to the actual Adobe PDF for it, it's actually a 2-page document.
Yeah,
And, somewhere on the other page, it actually explicitly details that for scouts, if you're working on your hiking merit badge, if you walk or hike the entire length of the trail as shown, that qualifies as your 15-mile hiking requirement. And if you add in leg A, which I don't know exactly where that is, but they say if you add leg A into the other 3 legs, that's a 20-mile hike.
that's great. That's great. Yeah, this was a 2-page document, but if you go to the link in the bottom of the slide, you can see the whole thing. So that's great. One of the things that surprises me is I've asked around, and I have gone on trails that scouts have built as Eagle projects, typically nature trails in Maine and in Florida, but I'm unaware of any scout recently doing something like that, except this one, and this is quite a while ago. I think John, you can verify that we don't get proposals like that. Okay. So there are many of these trails available.
Yeah, I'm
and
back, sorry. Wouldn't unmute. Yeah, we don't get proposals like that at all. Actually, we would have put something like that out, would be probably run out of town.
Right. Okay. So that's one. There are others available. If you go to the next slide, Steve. Whoops. Yeah, Isaac Davis Trail in Camporee. That's one's coming up in April. There's the web address that has information about registration and the activities that are associated with it. That's a great one.
Bring your cold weather clothes for the first couple hours.
Yeah,
Really cold in the morning.
gets cold at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I know.
March 28 is the deadline to for them to receive your registration.
Thank you, Steve. That's appreciate that additional information. Yeah. Yeah, I think the next one talks some more about the no, this is a National Park Service trail. This is a great walk. It's an easy walk from Lexington, from the Battle Green to Concord. And there are a number of historically accurate houses along the way, including one that's a timber frame structure that gives you some idea of how these buildings were constructed back in the early 1700s. So it's interesting, I don't know, this is a bit, I've tried to get scouts to go out to Lexington at 5 o'clock in the morning and have not been successful on that one. Steve, have you done that? Has your troop done that?
Yeah, well, with the troop, we've with 248 Waltham, we've done it twice in my tenure. The first time it was good weather, a little windy setting up, but the hike, was dry and sunny. That was sometime around 2010 or 2011. But the next time we did it, and I've forgotten which year it was horrible. The weather was just terrible. It was sleeting and cold and rain and snow, and it was just miserable the Saturday night, and then in the morning I mean, it wasn't bad enough for me to say to my troop, we're not doing this, but many other units did. And it became an attrition issue, and finally Kathy Brussa just said forget it, and she got the school buses and had. I think we were at the green in Acton where the monument is, and we all jumped on the buses and they took us to the you know, to Concord, to the Old North Bridge and the museum there. And as these things usually go, after we got there and we're walking around, the sun came out. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, or 4:30, it was really miserable, and there were a lot of young scouts and Webelos who were not properly prepared for the temperatures and the conditions.
Yeah.
So, but that's not to talk bad, it just these days
Memorable, Steve.
April can be pretty ugly as far as weather.
That's another leadership fail right there.
Yeah. You remember it well, don't you, Steve? Like it stays with you.
Henry,
Yeah,
hi.
Hey, yeah.
Eric, it was the sort of thing where when they, she didn't have to say, okay, the hike is canceled, everybody get on the bus. She could have simply said, for those who don't want to continue, you can get on the bus. But it was one of those guilty pleasures, I guess. It's like, oh, good, I don't have to be the bad guy.
Yeah,
I
it
get to
was a
ride the
waiting
bus.
game. Who's going to flinch first?
Yeah, I have to be the bad guy, but then I get to ride the bus, so
Yeah.
it was okay. And then, as luck would have it, the sun came out, and it wasn't so bad after all. But I highly recommend it because it's a great experience for the scouts. The camping out on the field in Concord. It's on Route 2.
Right.
Just beyond the Rotary, there's a field just west of the Rotary on
Yeah,
Route 2. And with
It's right next to MCI Concord.
This is so it's a good. We can point to that when there's some misbehavior in the crew.
a lot of life lessons, right there. And so they have a big bonfire, at night. And then the next morning, bright and early, I think it's around 4:30 or so, they start putting you on school buses and they take you to the Acton Boxborough High School. And once everybody gets to the high school, then you start marching and you go to the site of Isaac Davis's homestead. And there's flag poles, there's a podium, there's a monument and stuff. And the first time I'd done it as an adult, I was amused because, the only thought going through my head was, I sure hope the real estate agents explain to these people what happens every April, on Patriots Day, because a 21 gun salute with black powder muskets is a rude awakening if you don't know it's coming, with 700 people, standing in the road. So it was an amusing thought to me. But they speak there, and then you hike on, and there's a couple of other places. That's where you start at the Isaac Davis homestead. You hike on into Acton, you get to the green there. There's a monument where I believe Isaac Davis and the other individual who fell are buried. And then you stop at the Concord Green, and there's more talking, and then you go on to the Old North Bridge, and you get to watch the the rest of the parade, the militia and the Minutemen doing their handshake with the redcoats coming from the other side. It's great. It's worth doing, at least once if your troop has never done it. I think it's a good experience so long as the weather holds.
Yeah.
You ever been in the cemetery behind St. Bridget's Church in Lexington?
No.
There's a whole back corner there that's British territory. That's where they buried all the British soldiers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, by the yard waste.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one So part of what, of course, everybody gets a patch, and you saw the patch on the previous slide. Where'd it go? Here's the patch. It's been the same patch since I was a scout, and I kind of like that about it too.
Well, since 1775, it's got the date on it.
But the other, you can get a medal, which is I think it's a brass kind of an brassy ellipse that's like a vertical ellipse hanging from a white ribbon that you can pin on your uniform. And according to material that I've read from the Isaac Davis Trail Camporee, it's authorized to wear on the uniform. And in order to get it, you have to answer trivia questions. So there's a bit of education, that you can do with your unit. Scoutmaster certifies that everybody got the questions correct. You turn it in and you get the medals, and you pay for them in addition to the patches come with the cost of registration. The medals you pay extra if you turn in the trivia questions. And one of the questions on there is something about where British redcoats are buried, and there's a stone that is on the I don't know which side, how to
Yeah, I think it's on the east side of the bridge, I think.
east side of the bridge that commemorates at least two, I think, redcoats.
I think they were Hessians, weren't they? I don't even think they were British.
No, I don't think the Hessians were there. That was down in Trenton. But I could be wrong. Anyway, that I think that's somewhat educational, and you get a chance to go through the museum there before you have to get back on the buses, and then you just pack up and go home.
Yeah, point out that that Historic Trails book, they also have similar things for each trail, a bunch of questions that the scouts can answer and get either a patch or a ribbon, a metal type ribbon. I have no idea whether they're official or not, but the same notion of a bunch of trivia questions. Okay. The other thing is, of course, that there are many other options for hikes. And I look at, if you go to the next slide, there is a thing called trail spotting. I don't know if anybody has found this website, but they have a bunch of trails, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont, a variety of different trail lengths from very small mile plus to 5-6 mile, and all through relatively interesting places. They have one that goes through the historic parts of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a couple that go in other historic districts. There's also a large number of trails that are maintained by Mass Audubon that are very good for scout hikes. I love the one up on the Ipswich River. That's a nice one. And there you have the opportunity, you can work out a canoe trip into that. And then the next one is the, again, National Park Service, but this is Walden Park, Walden Pond. Can you slide down, Steve? One more. Yeah, there we go, the Walden Pond Trail. It's kind of interesting that, to me, it's very interesting. I grew up in New Jersey, which of course also has a huge amount of Revolutionary War history. In the area I was from, there was a historic trail along the Palisades that wound up around Fort Lee, which was one of the Revolutionary fortresses, and now it's a suburb of New York. And then across the river, Fort Washington, both of which were lost in a relative fiasco for the Continental Army. And then everybody took off and headed down to South Jersey, which is where my parents had a summer place. It was kind of interesting as a kid to bicycle down a path, and you knew that was the route that the Continental Army took going after the Battle of Trenton, heading up to Morristown for winter camp. Walden Pond. Ken, you sent a couple of notes in the text. I appreciate that about the Walden Pond trail activity. Thank you for doing that. Hopefully people have seen those. The other thing, do people make their own hike, their own favorite troop hikes?
I don't know if they're favorite, but when we were trying to prepare for the 20-mile, what is it, the Patriot Pursuit Trail hike a few years ago, we actually never ended up going, but we did get a couple 10-milers in. One of them used the Western Greenway. So we actually started from Cushing Square, where our church, our charter organization is, headed out through western parts of Belmont, through Waltham up into Lexington, back into Waltham, and then finally back into Belmont. The other one was starting the same location, heading down to the river, going along the Charles River, coming up on the backside of the Mount Auburn Cemetery.
Yep.
They've now added a bike trail now that kind of takes you over to Fresh Pond, but we just went down Aberdeen Street at the time, walked around Fresh Pond, and then headed back up to Cushing Square. So both of those were in excess of 10-mile trips. And the idea was to try to get some, kind of shakedown hikes for a 20-miler. That would actually, quite honestly, be a lot easier because the 20-miler would be fairly flat on that Patriot Pursuit Trail. And, we took on at least some hills in our hikes.
Yeah. We have Lee's December trip that he organizes also, which is short but map and compass oriented, maybe more at the Fells.
At the Fells, we've done that both Fells and over at the Beaverbrook, part of the Western Greenway.
Beaverbrook area there, and what is that? The Metropolitan Hospital that's abandoned. There's Lee mostly and me were out, and we created an orienteering trail there where you can do height measurements. You can use your step count and compass direction and things. So the activity starts with measuring up your paces for 50 feet, and then the scouts go out and get lost. But it's, as someone said earlier, it's a pretty safe place to get lost.
Those trails that are there on the old Metropolitan Hospital site were created when that facility was first developed as a tuberculosis hospital. And they put it there because Waltham in those days was out in the country, and they, not knowing much about tuberculosis, thought the fresh air, would be good for people. And so they built a system of trails so patients could walk and, breathe fresh air. So there's some well manicured trails running around through their property that they've connected in a variety of different ways.
There's one that I tried with the junior leaders one time, and never turned into a troop event. But what we did was we went from the lighthouse at the top end of Plum Island down to Sandy Point State Reservation and back, and that came into 19 point something miles, assuming you didn't do any of the detours, like to go out to the beach or to any of the nature trails that are out there. So that's a really pleasant walk. And in numerous places, again, you can stop and do some nature type things, which would add to the distance, but at least break up and, not just a grind for the walk. And then there are places along the way you can stop for a picnic lunch.
Want to
There's
move
a
on?
big loop trail over at Sheepsfold too.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole Middlesex, the Middlesex Fells, those trails. Yeah, you can basically circle the Middlesex Fells. That's a nice walk, a little up and down in that one too. It's not completely flat. Yeah. Okay. Did any other trail suggestions out there? That Beaverbrook sounds really interesting area.
Yeah, it takes you through in Waltham. They end up coming down back behind the to the YMCA, the junior senior high, right to the Store Conservation Land and into Stonehurst, yeah. So yeah, it's a huge north-south wooded area that goes all the way up into Lexington. Kind of cuts right by the Catholic Church on Trapello Road there.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of, it's the woods are pretty narrow at that point, but it does go through.
Isn't that part of, what do they call that? Greenway Trail or something?
Western Greenway. Yep.
Western Greenway, yeah, it goes through Waltham, but there's, I think the problem is that it's not completely contiguous. I think there are some places where you kind of have to connect the dots on your own.
No,
That
it actually
trail,
works. Yeah, it works very well from if you start just east of Lone Tree in Belmont and go over into from the Lone Tree into sort of the Beaverbrook North. You cross. There's a bridge over Beaverbrook into Waltham, and it ends up being contiguous all the way there back down to Stonehurst, right on Beaver Street, and then at that point, yeah, you kind of stop. So but at that point we have to walk back to Belmont. It'd be, if you wanted to, you could probably modify the hike and cut through the Girl Scout camp, but I decided I wasn't gonna, I wasn't gonna try to make arrangements to walk through that. It wasn't gonna.
More good. Yes.
What was that?
More good to trespass.
Yeah, I could have trespassed. I mean, yeah, I don't know. They actually might lock. I think they lock up the gate on Forest Street though, which is where you'd want to go in.
yeah, it's not exactly open land
Well,
walk.
if you were really prepared, you'd have your bolt cutters with you.
That's true. And then once you get back in close into cross back into Belmont, I know we cut back through the southern part of Beaverbrook. As another part of it, but yeah. But yeah, you're right, Steve. It's not going to form you a nice loop, all within the on the green trails, but it's pretty good.
Oh, yeah, we've done it, actually, our own unit has done it through Waltham and into Lexington. And it's it's a pleasant hike. And the funny thing is that you see remnants of parts of the city from decades ago, that have been abandoned because land has changed hands, the land use has changed, and there are remnants of infrastructure or other things. Like at some point near where the middle school is and that stretch between the middle school and the YMCA, somewhere along there, parallel to Lexington Street, there's this like massive concrete structure in the ground that I think it has something to do with water. I don't really know. It's bizarre. I don't know what its purpose was. It looked like some sort of bunker. Probably got something to do with water management, but it doesn't appear to be useful at the moment. And so you come across these sort of interesting phenomenon. There, I don't think it's a historic trail, but out in Acton, there is conservation land where the old Scout Camp Acton, there are 3 parcels of land. The old Camp Acton off of Pope Road, and then there's 2 other parcels of conservation land that abut it, that you can access in different ways. And there's plenty of trails to walk through that area. I think one end of the conservation area abuts the Neshoba Brook Rod and Gun Club. But there's an interesting landform on one of these, not landform, there's an interesting artifact on one of these trails that looks like, people speculate that it might have some ancient origins, but most historians, if I remember correctly, it's been years since I have read about this, but I think they were speculating it was really like some sort of colonial farmer's corn crib, or maybe a Native American, built some sort of a storage place out of stones that's survived, and off of these trails, and it's just an interesting curiosity. I don't think it's really, it's not like Concord Stonehenge or anything, but it certainly gives rise to speculation.
Yeah, I went out there a couple years ago. Actually, my goal was to actually check out Camp Acton. I had my car dropped off at the Dodge dealership out there, and I rode my bike up the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and then cut east at that point. And right off the rail trail, as part of that conservation land, is actually a pencil factory, an old pencil factory, along the brook, and then you have to weave yourself through the woods, and finally came up with Camp Acton, and I talked to a couple scout troops that were there. One of them used to actually come down. They're from Chelmsford, and they actually have ridden the rail trail down. So they've turned it just into a bike trip, which is interesting too. I think the Mass Central Rail Trail is going to provide a lot of capability, because that basically goes very close to Knobscott, and so that provides we did that going from Belmont to Knobscott by bike. It was like 18 miles, I think, back in the fall of 2020.
That art was a fantastic bike ride. There was just a tiny section there, wherever that was, to get over I-95. What was that, like quarter of a mile on
Yep.
regular roads, and then it was along the river at first, and then we crossed over I-95 when we rode whatever that rail trail, which just goes straight, doesn't arrow into Sudbury.
Yep.
It was awesome. It was
Yep,
fantastic that you found that.
Yeah, and Waltham is working on their section of that Mass Central Rail Trail, and hopefully Belmont will at some point too. And I think that'll provide a great avenue for any of the troops trying to get out of the city and going out to Knobscott. If you can get the Alewife or something like that, you ought to be able to ride all the way out to Knobscott, and actually can joke around with my son. It goes right out through Amherst and Northampton and all that. He said, he's at UMass now. I said, you just bring your bike out there. You can ride home on the weekends,
Yes.
We stayed at Treasure Valley. I think it was the spring of 21, and we rode a section of the Mass Central Rail Trail that was out in Rutland.
It's coming. He can come home soon when he graduates, right? He can take the bike home.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a trail that is not complete, but there's a lot of really good sections already.
Yeah.
A lot of progress. Yeah. Okay. John, I think the next one is your slide. Yes.
Yeah, gentlemen, on July 1st, Citizenship in Society became an Eagle Required Merit Badge. Make sure everybody knows that, please.
Will do.
We had a scout that turned in his Eagle packet, aged out, and doesn't have this merit badge.
Oh my.
So please make sure you guys know that. Well, I know you guys do, because you come to the stuff. The Scoutmasters are lacking, and there's a lot of people that are lacking. So just do what you can do.
Yeah.
Yes, spread the word, because this is going to be a serious problem. It's there's one extra Eagle Required badge, period. It's not that this is one that can be substituted or substituted for, like the hiking, cycling, swimming combo. You got to get this one.
Does this mean that there's like 12 Eagle Required now?
14.
14.
14?
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous,
Because
quite honestly.
13. Cooking was number 13.
Yeah,
This is-
having 14. I mean, I get that they're all great badges. I'm sure, but having 14 out of 21 be required. There's 7. I mean, you pick them up at Scout Camp, and I think there's opportunity missed to kind of explore some of them that are more career focused, the journalisms and the some.
I think it takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, it's I'd like to see more flexibility, where you do architecture and architectural landscape, and
Right.
explore those things as possible careers. And it seems like it's gotten a little overly prescribed, and I don't know what to do about it. But part of me would say, the citizenship in the nation is basically a regurgitation of 8th grade civics. So it's not like I think our scouts are really learning anything by doing that badge. And certainly, it's
Yeah, but how many eighth grade civics classes are there anymore?
It's required in our town.
It's
I don't know.
required, yeah. Yeah, so it's a repeat if they've done 8th grade, or they can do it in
No.
parallel.
So-
I think they should come up with a buy. Whereas if you don't want to do one of the required merit badges, you got to get 5 of these.
Yeah. So like swimming, hiking, biking, right?
Right, but
Yeah.
if you don't want to get, they give you a buy for one required merit badge, you got to go earn a five electives. Maybe there's a list of 5 electives for that one
Mm.
merit badge. So,
It's interesting because when they first created the Eagle Award, you just had to earn 21 merit badges, period, no specification. But by 1915, BSA was already starting to have, well, you have to have 21 merit badges, including, and then they started adding more and more mandatory ones. So it's been going on for over 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It to me it ends up feeling a little bit more like, I got a few fun summer camp badges, and now I got to turn the crank on 14 of these, and some of them, whatever, you got your camping and cooking and stuff like that, are going to come naturally as part of your camping adventures.
Right.
But the ones that are, like I said, the citizenship in the nation, definitely important, but somehow it just seems to me like
It's at least in Belmont is covered. I agree with you, Art.
yeah, yeah.
I think they should make bugling a required merit badge.
We got one scout, Peter, the bugler.
And mine would be add bird study, because that was a required badge for 50 years. So why did they drop that? Why did they drop bird study?
And don't
Yeah.
forget beekeeping.
Well,
We should make beekeeping an Eagle required one too.
Well, they should have a nature merit badge required, and
Yes, they should have some nature badge. Yes.
mammals or
Back in
bird
my
study
day, it
or
was. Back
It-
in my day, there was a nature merit badge was required, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I think also the conservation of natural resources,
Soil and water conservation.
soil
Yeah.
and water conservation, maybe. Yeah, I'm a little foggy on all of them, but
when I went through safety was a required
Required badge, yeah.
fire. You had
so
first aid, safety, and emergency prep.
they superseded safety with emergency preparedness, and
Yeah.
and they've made emergency preparedness optional with
Life
life
saving.
saving.
Yeah.
I can't argue a lot about that, because I suppose there's a lot of kids who maybe never have gotten Eagle because they swim strong enough to barely get swimming merit badge, let alone life saving, which can be a rather challenging badge, for kids who are not strong swimmers to get. So emergency preparedness, I think, is a good alternative. But if you've got citizenship in the nation, citizenship in the community, and citizenship in the world, why do you need citizenship in the society? How is that different?
That is, yeah, so it's very different actually in terms of how it's delivered. I sat in on one of the sessions. We have 2 or 3 adults in the troop that took the training, and it's a discussion, like several series of discussions, and it's really interesting discussions to listen into how, at least what the first round it ran, and when I sat in, the scouts were 16, so they were a little bit more insightful. You've met some of them, John, at your Eagle board reviews, probably all of them actually, and it was really interesting to hear their thoughts.
They spend so much time tweaking merit badge requirements and advancement requirements. If they thought these things were important to include, they should have built them into one of the other citizenship, badges, rather than create yet another badge. It just doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
I'm actually going to put into the chat a link to the district page on the council website, because we've got a list of, not a list, but the steps in the Eagle process pertaining to project approvals and board review requests, so that it's somewhat spelled out rather than people having to network with each other, to find it out. And we're John Tumblin and myself and Ron, we're going to be working on a presentation for that's really going to build on, that simple process that I've got typed up on the website. It's going to really address these different issues that we've over experience have learned that people just don't, especially units that haven't had much history with Eagle Scouts, they seem to find difficulty. And even those of us who have experience, sometimes you just kind of scratch your head whether is this an Eagle project or is it not an Eagle project. So we're putting that together. We're going to record. We're going to record it, make it available on YouTube, but we're also going to do a virtual presentation and an in-person one. I think, John, have we decided that we'll do the in-person one at the May 11 program kickoff?
I think we kicked the idea around, but we didn't set the date, but we could probably do that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a good opportunity, a good situation to to piggyback on the program kickoff, at least to have, maybe not do a full presentation, but at least to have, that presentation available to people. It's really, I don't want to steal John's thunder or anything, but there are project proposals and Eagle rank applications that we've seen that, the unit leader isn't paying attention. They're just signing things, like we shouldn't.
The crowning glory was the one I just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most egregious one that we've seen. But there are others where, those of us in the advancement committee work very closely with the scout to adjust this kid's project so it actually qualifies. It never should have got that far, the unit leader should have said this isn't what projects is supposed to be, and work with them at the unit level before they bring it up to the district.
On the Eagle application, it tells you how to fill it out. Assistant patrol leader is not a position of responsibility. You know how many times I see that on the Eagle application?
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
while a life scout, so they put the date in from before they were a life scout. Stuff like that. Just gonna read the directions.
So, do we have, is there enough?
that is night for us, yeah.
Yeah, it's what, 8:45?
Yeah.
Does this bring us to the end, Ron?
This brings us to the end. Yep.
I have a question. I see the April topic is junior leader training.
Yes.
Is this is this a historical perspective? Because it's not called JLT anymore.
Oh, it's how do you train the leaders in your troop? That's what I'd like a discussion of.
Okay, I'm being humorous because that's what it was years ago, right? JLT.
Yeah, all right. I've given up with the acronyms, NYLT, whatever. But I think it's interesting because I would hope that each unit has got their own tradition of how does the Scoutmaster and SPL introduce a new youth leader to their responsibilities? How do we do that without having to send them away for a week of training somewhere? Because if you rely on that, you're going to have, not going to have good junior leaders if they're not mentored from the day one of their election.
Yeah, the troop leadership skills for troop or leadership skills for troops or scout, whatever. I can never figure it out.
ILSP,
Introduction to leadership skills for troops or something like that. But yeah, we've had a couple of our scouts go through that, and we've tried to work that a little bit. We have not been successful in the big picture. Outside of trying to work with individual scouts to say here's your setting out what are your goals while you're going to be in this position,
Right.
But in terms of running kind of a collective training, we've had a few fits and starts, but I wouldn't say it's something that's been overly successful to a point where you have older scouts leading it. Yeah.
Some troops are not.
That's a good conversation for April, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So thank you, everybody. That was kind of neat. It's nice to share some ideas about historic trails and some other ideas about how to improve the PSA.
I'm not sure. Sorry, we were meeting with our potential new charter organization this evening at 7:00. So I was in, but that meeting kept going. So I missed, which was good discussion. Was there a discussion earlier about incident reports during this meeting?
Not today.
So there was a presentation. We had someone in.
That was a few months ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a situation this past weekend where Henrik was actually on the trip. He's left the meeting now. But we had one of our drivers had pulled off into a side of the road, was kind of unable to get up a hill. And so they had parked the car, and I think it was like a library or something they had shoveled out and gotten into their driveway. I don't know the details. But somebody else kind of was sliding down the hill. This was up to one of the ski resorts up there, so there's quite a bit of traffic heading up, and ended up bumping into the car and doing some damage. So he filled out the incident report and showed it to me on Tuesday night, and it looked reasonable. Does that get sent into then that sort of the generic Spirit email address for the council, or where does it go to, and what really becomes of it? Is this just kind of an academic bookkeeping thing, or does this actually trigger any type of insurance, or how does that work?
I am not sure. I will pull up the information and email you the person who's on that committee's name and her email, and you can go from there. I also have the document that I think it's just a form that you described that
he's already filled that out. That's online. That's easy to find.
Nobody got hurt, right?
No, nobody. Is an unoccupied car, so there's vehicle damage. And so they traded papers and stuff like that. I mean, they saw a thing happening in slow motion, right? I mean, somebody's sliding down the hill. This other truck went parallel on the road and was just sliding down the hill. So and ended up just hitting the front fender of the car. So it's not major damage. I mean, it was drivable. And it's I don't know. It's not a brand new car either. So
I'm not even sure if that is considered an incident. I thought I came away with the notion that if there's any kind of injury involved, not just.
It says property damage too.
It does. Okay.
So yeah, because originally I was curious about that too. So yeah, if you could forward that to me, Ron, that'd be great. And
definitely will get to you tonight. Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind sending tonight's presentation too. I'm sorry I missed it. It looks like a lot of good stuff.
Absolutely, and it was with Gary's permission. Gary made up a nice supplement to that, a PDF, which I'll be sending around to everybody who's been here tonight. I don't know if we can attach that to the Facebook stuff, Steve.
Facebook doesn't do attachments.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You can do a
link
to a Google Docs or some other file sharing webpage.
If you just include my email address and I can directly email you a copy as an attachment to an email.
Yeah, the other place, I mean, somebody put up the oh, there's a Dropbox thing here too, but somebody put up the Spirit of Scout Spirit District Sons of Liberty webpage. I'm not sure if we have access to that to actually go ahead and post things there.
Anything posted to the any web page that's attached to the council, you actually have to pass it through. Are they going back to school or are they? Hold on, I think Angela would be the contact.
I think that must be the case because we don't have an email address to announce the roundtable either. It has to go through the council.
Yeah, generally I send things to Angela to update the district page. But I have a feeling that incident reporting stuff should already be on the council.
Oh, it is. It was on the national page. But in terms of where to turn it in.
Yeah, the person who did the presentation at that roundtable, I'll get you her email, and then that will be probably the best way to get really good answers.
Great.
Whatever that name is.
Can you access the Dropbox that I just file that I just put in there?
Yeah, let me just check. I copied the link over, so I would have it, but I didn't actually fire it up.
Try to I can navigate to it differently. Actually, I don't know why I put the Dropbox link in when I could just go to my hard drive.
Yeah, I mean, this looks similar to some of the stuff that's up on the national website.
What was her name, Ron? What she presented?
I'm blanking. I'm gonna go dig through my email. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So the link in there to incident reporting. That's where we went to. It had you download the incident information reporting tool, and we did that, and he filled it out. So okay.
Okay.
Here's a PDF. I just attached the PDF to the chat.
Okay.
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 So does anybody have any experience of actually filing one, and does it really kind of matter in a lot of ways, or is it
I
just?
think it does matter, but if there's no, it does matter because they need to document these things so that people don't get surprised. Like you don't want your insurance company to say nobody told us about that, because then it could be a problem.
Mhm.
So you should report.
Right. But I was just saying, right. I understand that requirement. I'm just curious whether or not anything really comes out at the other end other than just kind of accounting. Is there anything to sort of BSA insurance that helps at all in these situations, or you pretty much just say, okay, there are secondary insurance to your normal automobile insurance, assuming that in this case here, the other guy was at fault for sliding down the hill into his car. So, I just wasn't sure how that all plays out.
Well, I think when we get her name and contact info,
I'll reach out to her.
Yeah.
Talk to her.
Yep. Great.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go.
Okay, John. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, John.
I think we pretty much can wrap it up at this point. Stephen, anything else from you?
No, I think we've covered it. Good discussion around the historic trails. I'm trying to remember what Mr. Bowl usually does at the end of a round table, and he's got his own personality in doing things. But I'll just close by saying, join us on the 24th for the district meeting. I'm sorry, the district annual meeting and recognition event, and think about people in your sphere of scouting who deserve recognition and nominate them. So I had posted the link previously to the registration form online, but I'll do it again real quickly. April 24, it's a Monday evening, at the First Baptist Church in Arlington, and that form is for registration, $20 tickets. But if you go to the district page on the council website, there's a link that talks to another document that talks about the recognition opportunities. And of course, you can always contact me if you have questions. So that's it. Our next roundtable is April 13. It's a Thursday, so it's not unlucky. And then we have it. Thank you all for attending. We'll see you on the scouting trail.
Take care. Have a good night, everybody.
Perhaps see you this weekend, Steve.
I'll be up there,
Yeah.
running orienteering.